Alright everyone, I'm hyper-caffeinated and ready to go, so, buckle up. We've got new Bobulinski revelations, actually, from yesterday on Tucker Carlson's segment. And Bobulinski is corroborating what the Hunterbiden emails off of the laptop that we know comes from him. We know the emails are real, they're not doctored, they're not shooped, there's nothing disinfo related about this. It has nothing to do with Russia. That's a bunch of bullshit being peddled by an increasingly nervous corporate media complex and an increasingly nervous DNC and Biden campaign. Bobulinski, who was an associate of Joe Biden's, had security clearance, was involved in foreign dealings, has corroborated, once again, the emails are real. Joe Biden personally profited off of the Burisma venture, and also apparently, and this is arguably more damning, a deal in Kazakhstan. Now, Hunter Biden doesn't understand diplomacy. He doesn't understand economics. In fact, I'm not sure what the fuck he understands at all that would qualify him for any form of business association except for one important thing, and that's what this all hinges on. He was the son of a long-term senator / former VP. That's the only qualification. So what happens, like, imagine if Donald Trump today were to say, okay, Don Jr., he's going to be chairing this energy firm in Kuwait or something. Don't you think that there's a strategic reason related to politics that individual be chosen? It doesn't have to do with any form of acumen about the energy sector. As Don Jr., I mean, maybe if you're putting him in a bank or something, it would make sense. But if you're putting him on a coal mining firm in the middle of the Yucatan or something, he doesn't know what the fuck's going on, but he's a Trump. And so the insinuation is, of course, you're using that to get to the big Don. If Hunter Biden, whose main finesse in life involves smoking crack and fucking people, that appears to be his lifestyle most of the time, drunken, stoned orgies and stuff like that, if he's chairing a firm and grabbing up tens of millions of dollars, and he's got emails to the effect of, yeah, the big guy wants a 10% cut, and you've got people working with Biden at the time who swear up and down, yes, they openly discuss these things, and that references Joe Biden. Let me ask you a rhetorical question, and it's rhetorical because we already know the answer. Why is it that the entire corporate media refuses to report on this except for to call it disinformation? They won't even investigate the claims. Half of CNN's viewer base probably doesn't even know the Hunter Biden laptop even exists in the first place, and most of the rest that do, they think that it was manufactured by Russians or by a bunch of Chinese communists, despite the fact that the allegation is that Hunter Biden's the one in bed with the CCP. I mean, this gets weirder and weirder. It's a rhetorical question, though, because we know the answer. You got a week till the election, well, 6 days now, and these people are terrified because they know that if they actually report on this, if they did their job, if they were conducting journalism, this would be in the public consciousness bigger than Watergate, and Trump would be currently coasting to re-election. That's the only reason that they're not talking about it. Now, of course, with each subsequent release, each subsequent statement by Bobulinski, things get more damning for Joe Biden. We have corroboration from multiple individuals on an incontrovertibly real email chain that we know that it's real. That part's objective. It's already proven. We know now, we have reason to believe, reasonable suspicion that Joe Biden illegally profited off the fact that he was the former VP through his son in foreign dealings that have corrupted him, that would leave him open to blackmail, that bring up the possibility that he owes someone in the literal sense, and that if he's president, he won't be fully independent. Trump has a Chinese bank account because he owns several properties in Beijing, and people act like it's the end of the world. Oh, it's a secret bank account. Obviously, he's got dirty dealings. China controls him. Oh, Putin shook his hand. Obviously, he's, under Moscow's control. He's a puppet. But they don't apply that same logic to Biden, because if you did, he'd be Beijing Biden. And if you think that Ukraine and Kazakhstan are the end-all be-all of these dealings, no. The big kahuna in the business world as far as going behind the back of U.S. interests is China. Nobody else, bar none. The next 10 in line don't even stack up to Beijing. Because what Beijing does is it gladly will operate a whole bunch of slush funds and middleman accounts. It'll let you embezzle money from anywhere in the world through Beijing. And they'll make the notes look good. They'll make it all add up on paper, if there's any paper left whatsoever. The problem is, Beijing, here's how the commies in China operate. They love to help you make money. They don't, trust me, they're very capitalistic on that end, at least in a roundabout way. Love to make money. Please invest here. Do whatever you want. But look at what they do to their domestic businesses. If you want to know how they'll treat foreigners who are engaged in this behavior, look at how they treat domestic investors. If I'm a millionaire in China, and I can get the go-ahead from the Commie Party to do something, I can skirt workers' rights, I can skirt environmental protections, I can harass people from other countries, I can enslave people, I can do whatever the goddamn hell I want. I can walk in openly and rape my employees in front of one another, and nobody's going to do a goddamn fucking thing. But if I step out of line politically, I'm fucked. And I can always, at any given time, if it becomes inconvenient that I exist, I can be killed, or I can be blackmailed, or they can just throw me under the bus and replace me, because I'm a dime a dozen. There's so many investors in China. Do you think that maybe they do the same thing to foreign investors? Do you think maybe if I'm a multi-billion-dollar magnate, or I'm a big hit politician like a Joe Biden, using a middleman like Hunter to try to shield myself from repercussions, and I'm doing business in foreign nations using basically a Chinese proxy, which I'm sure happened here, and the allegation is Biden's in the pocket of Beijing, don't you think that if I'm got a son who's, doing greasy shit, and maybe I get caught up in it and I end up in a hotel room with a couple of 16-year-old Thai prostitutes, don't you think there might be a video of that floating around somewhere in the Chinese interwebs? Of course there is. They've got stuff to blackmail everyone that invests there. As long as you don't step out of line, there's no problem. But I don't want a president who's been caught up in that. If it's Joe Biden, the former VP, Joe Biden who used to have security clearance and now is just an informal figurehead, I don't care if he embezzles a bunch of money from Chinese slavery, because all these people do that anyway. But as soon as he's in elected office, if there's any dirt on him, it compromises the security and integrity of the U.S. executive branch. It could be a huge problem. We'd have a president who is not entirely independent. And that's what the legacy media should be fixating on. If by the way, and I mentioned this the other day, if you want to talk about this to a person who's not already decided not to back Biden, if you want to convince them to not back Biden, to change their vote, that's a whole thing right now, because a lot of states let you do that, by the way, if you voted early. Yeah, you should change your vote to Trump. If you want to convince them, focus on the hypocrisy aspect of all the Hunter Biden stuff. Just look at what you can prove. Hunter Biden smoked crack, had orgies and stuff. Bring up the crime bill. Talk about, well, Biden would put your son in prison for the rest of his life if your son did this. Don't you have a little bit of a problem with the hypocrisy of him knowing this was going on and doing nothing while hundreds of thousands of others were incarcerated? And number two, the business dealings themselves touch Joe Biden explicitly. The allegation from multiple individuals who can verify, who can corroborate that the email chain is real, is that the big guy spoken of as Joe Biden, he was cut in for 10% on a deal that involved him using his clout as a politician and then former VP to squish an investigation into a company that was involving his son. This is presumably illegal. And what Hunter Biden's doing was illegal, but that's not Joe. Of course, we have no evidence that Joe Biden himself ever took up the pipe. I think he seems more like a gin and tonic man to me, a martini drinker than that. At this point, the biggest rush that he gets every day is when the oat bran muffin comes out the other end, I think, at his age. But it definitely, the whole thing is interconnected. We have corroboration the emails are real. We know the pictures and video are real. Why would you doubt any of the other releases that are coming through? And I realize another thing is saying, well, it's coming from this Chinese website. Well, it's co-opted by Bannon and a bunch of Americans. It's a site banned in China. It's only Chinese in the loosest sense of the term. It's basically a pirate website style thing. It's actually really weird how this is happening. There's some disagreement over whether the laptop actually was delivered by the repairman in the first place, the blind repairman, as opposed to maybe having existed in Ukraine and other places for a number of months prior. That would be interesting. Imagine that Giuliani and Bannon are coordinating as part of a hit campaign against Biden. Well, but the hit's real. It's not disinfo. It's not fake. It's allegations of criminal behavior by Joe and provable criminal behavior by his son. By the way, is Hunter Biden going to face repercussions? I don't think the statute of limitations is out on hiring prostitutes, possibly underage individuals too, or hard drug use and possibly giving them to prostitutes, which would be dealing under the 94 crime bill, I believe. Has the statute of limitations run out on this? Is he going to go to jail? Is he going to be prosecuted? We got video evidence of all of it. The FBI had it for a long time, did absolutely nothing with it. Crack smoking is illegal. It might not be in my mind what should be a crime, but that's the law as it is. As Joe Biden, by the way, helped to fucking make it. Why isn't he being prosecuted? Bring Hunter Biden in for questioning. Charge him. Why isn't he being charged, FBI? Why isn't he being charged, Delaware PD? They refuse to do anything about it. Lifestyles of the rich and vapid. Laws for thee, not for me. So when I see the Bobulinski bombshell here, the only problem with it is that the rest of the legacy media won't inform their fans of the news. Not talking about what's actually going on. They'd rather talk about Orange Man bad for the next 6 days. You bet they'll probably talk about it after the election. If Biden's elected and no longer has a problem, they'll be willing to report on Hunter Biden finally. Making sure to mollycoddle in the process Joe Biden and not talk about the fact that he's swept up in the whole thing. That's about all. Peace out.